This episode, as with all episodes, exists thanks to the supporters of the show who contribute a mere $3 per month via patreon.com/copytradersclub. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support. Copy Traders Club, where you can learn how to make better decisions and more money copy trading. I'm Gavin Macaulay, my name and username on eToro. Today we get to know a cadet PI, successful YouTuber and disciple of Charlie and Warren. Here we go. Season 2, Episode 36 of the Copytraders Club podcast, and as always my aim as an eToro enthusiast is to demystify this new and uncharted world of copy trading. Understand what are the pitfalls and best practices, and how ultimately to succeed as a copy trader. In chats like today's, the aim is to answer all your questions about this popular investor, and reveal more about them than anywhere else, so you can assess whether they might suit you. In this episode, we talk to Thijs Nijenhuis, a young Dutch investor and pianist staying sharp while the market is flat. And he approaches. Thijs, hallo. Welkom bij Copy Traders Club.
That's perfect.
Well, what's perfect is that you're here with us today, Thijs. And I don't know if you know, but in order to get past security, you need to answer a series of quickfire questions. Ready for those?
Yeah, of course.
Username on eToro.
Thijs Nijenhuis 1.
Date you joined eToro.
A little bit difficult to say, but it was halfway through 2020, COVID-19 pandemic.
Date you became a popular investor.
November 2020.
Year of birth.
2001.
Place of residence.
Netherlands, Rotterdam.
Profession.
Right now still student, but I do things on the side, and I'm related to the big 4 companies.
Briefly state what you aim to achieve on eToro.
Yeah, what I try to do is buy phenomenal businesses at phenomenal prices and hopefully help people build great returns.
Name one of your investing heroes.
Charlie Munger, for sure.
Name one of your favorite investing books.
The Essays by Warren Buffett.
That completes the formalities. Let's proceed into the VIP section here at the Copy Traders Clubhouse. The glorious surroundings of the Copy Traders Lounge await you. Thijs Johannes Pieter Nijenhuis, aka Thijs Nijenhuis 1. Are you ready for this magical transition?
Yeah.
Okay, Thijs, come on in, take a seat, relax here in the lounge. Can I get a little drink or anything?
Yes, I'd like a Coke, please.
Coca-Cola? Wow, you're taking this Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger fandom to the next level.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, they are great heroes. I mean, great teachers.
Not when it comes to diet.
That is true. Although I like the occasional Coke too.
And their longevity is pretty impressive, you have to say.
Absolutely.
They're old men, but let's talk about you as a young boy. I read, in fact, it says on your bio, that you bought your first stock at the age of 9. What the heck's going on there?
Yeah, no, it's actually true. I just earned my first money by playing music, actually. And I earned like $6. That was it, $6. And I decided to buy stock with it. Now, at that point, I didn't have any idea what I was doing, of course. I just, looked for something that was less than $6. I bought it. I was lucky because I didn't have to pay commissions. If I did have to pay commissions, I wouldn't have had the money. So quite a lucky, how I ended up there. But eventually I bought a stock and every day kept tracing the stock, seeing what it did. and learned along the way.
But how does a 9-year-old A know that there's such a thing as buying a stock, and B, physically buy one?
Well, I was actually making a joke. I was asking around, what shall I do with this money? I just earned this freshly made money, my first money ever. What do I do with it? And someone just said, like, oh, buy a stock, like just as a joke. And I said, okay, what is a stock? No, it's just a joke. You shouldn't be, thinking about these things. But I kept persisting, and I got the explanation. I said, I want one. I just want it. And obviously I had to do it through my parents' account. I couldn't buy stocks at that time. It would be a little bit crazy for a 9-year-old boy. But my parents bought a stock in their name for me. I gave them my €6, and they gave me a stock. So that was how it went.
And do you still hold it?
No, I do not.
Ah.
No, I think it's better that I don't. Especially in the beginning, you just, like I said, I literally looked at my money. I said, I have $6. What can I buy for $6? So the first stock that came up, oh, this was like €5. Let me just pick this one then. So at the end of the day, obviously not a very successful strategy, but that's how we all start.
And was it a name anyone would recognize?
Yeah, it's an old Dutch insurer. It was just past 2008, 2009, so certainly not the best time to buy an insurer. Luckily, I bought it after the big crash, so I actually made a couple of bucks on it.
There you go.
But I wouldn't say it was a very good purchase.
Okay, so as you say, you're in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam.
Yeah.
Is that where you were born and bred?
I was actually born and raised in the east side of the country, and for my studies, I moved to the western part of the country.
And you're at university in Rotterdam?
Yes, I also go to another university in Leiden, which is a little bit upwards. So Rotterdam is a little bit more towards the south of the Netherlands. But ultimately, it's a very small country. I mean, people always joke about it. From one side of the country all the way to the other, it takes only 3 hours. So I'm still close home.
And so normally I don't like to refer back too much to the quickfire questions, but you were born in 2001, did you say?
Yes.
So you're now the ripe old age of?
21.
21. I think you're possibly the youngest guest we've had in Copytraders Club.
Yeah, it is possible. I mean, of course, I get this a lot. People say, what are you telling me? What are you doing? You're only 21. But yeah, I started young, and I have acquired a lot of knowledge over the years. And so I'm happy to be on this podcast. Thank you so much for having me, by the way.
Oh, it's a thrill. And you've got all these years of compounding ahead of you, unlike an old fella like me who's, 1 foot in the grave, the other on a bar of soap.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is always, of course, the beauty. I mean, if you have a long runway, the snowball can just keep compounding for a longer time. So that's always a great advantage of starting young. That is for sure. And I'm very, very happy to have started quite young.
You must have also started playing music quite young. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this was actually not all that serious. I mean, back in the day, everyone kind of had to play an instrument, had to do something with music. I played the keyboard at that time. And so we had this little event that you could play on the streets for music. And so I earned a little bit of money. I invested that. And later on in my life, I started playing the piano. So then I got a little bit more serious. But back in the day when I was 9, it was not that serious. But I was happy to make some money with it.
And you've been making money online with your current musical skills. Came across something online where you detail what music streaming services pay artists.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah, I publish some music. I share some music, especially to get some further insights in that industry. Because to me, always this industry seems a little bit closed. We see the artists in, the big car or whatever, but we don't quite know how they make the money, how much they make. And so I kind of wanted to get some more insight into that. So I shared, a couple of piano pieces, nothing special, just to get a little bit of a broader understanding of how that works. And so I shared my results indeed on the internet. So I'm glad you found that.
Absolutely. So if the listener fancies a little bit of Schubert, Tchaikovsky, or Chopin, I will add a link to Thijs's music on YouTube.
That's great.
I would recommend his rendition of Chopin's Prelude No. 4 in E minor. 2 minutes of moving melancholy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Do you know what I mean when I say this? What tears are shed from the depths of the damp monastery?
Now you got me thinking. Tell me.
Well, that's sort of the unofficial name of that tune.
Okay.
Of that piece, I should probably say.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Because he wrote it in a monastery and well, I've got the details here. According to George Sand's daughter Solange, who stayed with the composer at the monastery in Mallorca when the preludes were written, my mother gave a title to each of Chopin's wonderful preludes. These titles have been preserved on a score he gave to us. That title score is lost, but Solange did record the names of the preludes, apparently without assigning the names to the prelude numbers. It's believed that the title translates as "What Tears Are Shed from the Depths of the Damp Monastery" corresponds to Prelude No. 4.
It's actually quite interesting because he wrote all these preludes while being extremely ill. So he was kind of looking death in the face. Also, this prelude that you're describing was actually played at his funeral. So it certainly is a, deep prelude, so to speak.
Very good. Yeah. That was another thing I was going to mention, that at his request, it was played at his funeral, along with Mozart's Requiem. So there you go. I'm pretending to be a terribly cultured man researching for this chat.
No, not at all. I'm happy you looked into it because I always find it fascinating to kind of see what is the story behind the piece, of course. It's quite important when you listen to the piece that you kind of know, what is the idea behind it. So I'm very glad that you did some research in it.
Well, that prelude, as I discovered in my research, features in like so many movies and TV shows. It just crops up everywhere. So if your ear is attuned to it, you'll recognize it all over the place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about how I came across you. Well, it was your YouTube channel relating to stocks rather than classical music. And we're going to talk about that in considerable detail later on. Let's just peer behind the curtain when I ask you, Thijs, tell us something you're very bad at.
Yeah, well, actually, of course, it's a great question. We are always, trying to improve our weaknesses, so to speak. And lately, I've been working on my English, actually. I've been watching back my videos, and sometimes I tend to use specific words too much. I just keep repeating them or keep using them. It sounds quite awful sometimes. So I try to work on that.
What words do you use too much?
Right.
Oh, at the end of a sentence.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Too much. Way too much. And it's difficult because sometimes I start recording and I know, okay, whatever you do, you don't use that word in this video. But then you start using another word too much. So, yeah, it turns out to be quite difficult.
Okay, let's have a question from the art of people. If you could pick a number between 1 and 10 that isn't 7.
Really? 9.
Who has been the most important influence on you?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know to answer that because it kind of depends on the kind of thing that you look at, right? So for investing, of course, that would have been Warren Buffett, perhaps Charlie Munger, that mixed philosophy, so to speak. In other areas of your life, it might be something else. But yeah, for investing, of course, it will be Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, especially if you read the essays. I mean, there is such wisdom in those essays. I think every investor should read them. And they have changed my life too, my investing life. And of course, accordingly, also my life in general.
Okay, Thijs, now let's move on to the eToro related stuff, now that we've gotten to know you a little bit better. You young Dutch musical gentleman that you are.
Thank you.
Let's start with your bio. If I could ask you to read from your bio, maybe just the strategy section for now.
Yeah. So my key principles are buying businesses, buying stocks that sell at a good price. So no expensive stuff, no speculative stuff, and certainly no crypto. So what I mean by that is you look for intrinsic value, look for intrinsic business value. Obviously, it's a little bit of a hard point because people agree and disagree with intrinsic value. That's the whole point of investing. But at the end of the day, it means you need something substantial, cash flows, profits, something like that, and not, just potential on paper, so to speak. And of course, no crypto speaks for itself, I guess. Then the second point, long-term stable growth. So yeah, I'm one that is really extremely long-term focused. So I really could not care less about what the market is doing today, tomorrow, last quarter, next quarter. I really don't mind. Speaks kind of for itself too, but I would say I'm a little bit extreme in that. I don't mind holding businesses forever, so to speak. I don't have any selling period in mind for any business I buy. So I would say that's rather long term. Yeah, transparent, of course, speaks for itself. I mean, if someone copies you, you have to make sure that they understand what's happening to the portfolio. And then, patience and no leverage. No leverage, of course. That is the golden rule of investing. Never leverage. It's too risky.
Let's have a quick look at your overall results.
Yeah.
So as you say, you joined in 2020. The first month we have is May, so a little over half a year and almost 32% at the end of that period. 2021, 29%. And then this difficult 2022, you're currently at minus 25%.
Yeah, exactly.
But with such a long-term view, I imagine you're not too perturbed about this current situation.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm very happy with it, actually, because last year I struggled a lot finding great businesses at great prices. It was really tough because everything was so highly valued. And right now we finally have some relief. We have some deals that we can look at. And so I'm a very happy man. I'm very happy that the market is going down.
Let's have a little look at your risk score. Let me describe this. Well, I'm looking at the 12 months on the risk score chart. Started off green for the first 5 months. Now we've dipped into yellow, which means average risk of 5, occasionally rising to 6, but it's pretty consistent and controlled. Like everyone has seen a rise in their risk score over that period. Yours isn't very dramatic.
I wouldn't say so either. Yeah, personally, I don't like the risk score that much. I don't think it gives me that much insight. At the end of the day, it's all about volatility. Volatility is, of course, important for certain people. If you want to cash out, for example, then of course volatility is important. You don't want the possibility of having your portfolio being cut in half in a couple of weeks, for example. There will be too much volatility. But I think for the long-term investor, volatility is just almost nonsense, almost completely unimportant.
Would you be happy if eToro renamed that the volatility score?
Oh, I would be certainly much happier. But of course, in the academic world, this is how they define risk. That is the beta in finance in general. It's just how they measure risk, and that is just all based on volatility. So I understand where eToro gets it from.
Copier numbers and assets under management. Currently, copier numbers 31, assets under management under 50K. I should mention you're a cadet, popular investor. So you're below the 50K mark. First question on that is, do you think you should have more copiers?
Well, of course, it is up to everyone to decide for themselves who they want to copy and who not. I'm not the one that should say, oh, I deserve more. What I try to do is for the people that copy me to get the best results. That is the only thing that really matters most for me because they have trusted me with their funds, which is an incredible responsibility. So that is my first and foremost goal. to make sure that they are doing well. And then if people want to follow along, of course, I would only be happy with that. So yeah, that is it. You're right. Right now it's under 50K. Of course, also impacted by the decline in the markets. So we'll see where this will be in, let's say, 5 years when markets are hopefully, up again or a little bit more stabilized. Who knows? Perhaps not. We'll see.
And do you know where your copiers come from? Do you know many of them personally?
I know none of them personally, actually. So these are all, strangers, so to speak. I have informed them through eToro, potentially through YouTube too. And so I don't know any of them personally. They are spread out across the entire world. So that's great to see. I like that.
You mentioned your YouTube channel. It's perhaps worth pointing out at this stage, you've got 5.15 thousand subscribers, 5,150 subscribers. How come you haven't converted more of them to copiers? Do you not think those two numbers are kind of out of alignment?
Well, I don't push anyone to copy me. That is not my first and foremost goal on YouTube. My goal on YouTube is to educate people, to help people, hopefully. Frankly, I don't like, the finance sector in which people are really pushy. Oh, do this, do that. I think I know, for a fact that my followers on YouTube are quite smart people. They know a lot, and sometimes they like to comment too and say, hey, I don't agree with you on this point. And that is something I really like. I don't think I'm the person that should say to them, oh, you need to copy me, you should copy me, etc. So I do show my portfolio for the sake of transparency, of course. But at the end of the day, what's most important for me is informing and not necessarily converting.
That's interesting. I wonder if you turned up the eToro references, made that slightly more of a focus. Would that filter through to your copy numbers?
Yeah, most likely. I mean, I guess if I show it a lot and I inform and kind of, sell eToro, so to speak, I assume certainly more people would copy. But that's something I have never done to date, and I'm not planning on doing anytime soon either.
Does anytime soon include becoming a champion, do you think?
I certainly hope so, but once again, my goal is for the people that copy me right now to get great returns for them. And so if we get back in, let's say, a bull market, whenever that may be, I do certainly hope with the bets we make right now, with the businesses we buy right now, that we will get great results. And so you will kind of have this organic growth of assets under management. And then I think champion is certainly possible, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult time to be picking up copiers at the moment for an investor of your style, especially.
Exactly.
The people who are doing great these days are short sellers and FX guys.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not my strategy.
Well, yes, I certainly don't get the feeling that you're about to pivot to become one of those.
Absolutely not. No. No thanks.
Uncle Charlie wouldn't be proud of you.
Exactly. I can't let him down.
In your pinned post, you say, copy with whatever amount you want, but everything under $300 is not recommended. Now, that struck me as a bit vague, and I thought I'd go in and do the exercise to see what your minimum copy amount is. Do you know what your minimum copy amount is?
No, I'm not quite sure. What is it right now?
Would you be surprised if I told you it was $3,333?
So much? How can it be so much? No, yeah, I'm completely shocked.
Well, because you have a couple of really tiny positions.
Yeah.
One of them's in WBA, Walgreens Boots. You've got a 0.03% position.
Now, I'm not quite sure if that's right. I think in my portfolio, it should be a little bit higher. Yeah, for me, it's like 2.8%.
Yes, but it's the minimum trade size that is the key, not the position size.
Okay, yeah.
So you've got a trade in there that's really small. You've also got a very small one in the, I think it's in the World Index.
Yeah.
It's all about trade size.
Yeah. I understand. Perhaps I should take a look at that.
Yeah, I think it's something that loads of people don't fully understand. I see it all the time on eToro, people saying, oh, can you tell me what the minimum copy amount is? And people say, oh, I recommend this number. And that's not the question. The question is, what's the minimum amount to get all of your trades?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it'd be good to tidy that up. Here's a question I often don't ask, but I'm going to ask you because it might lead us somewhere interesting. Here we are at a time when the market has dropped a fair amount, may have further to go. As you mentioned earlier, lots of businesses are approaching or have perhaps arrived at something closer to fair value or margin of safety. What's on your watch list right now?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. Of course, there are many businesses I watch and kind of take a look at, but I would say there are three baskets for me that are extremely interesting right now. So yeah, one, of course, China. I talked about this a lot in my videos on eToro. I think we'll get back to that later on in this podcast too. Second of all, cyclical businesses. Now, I would say advertising businesses like Alphabet and Meta are also cyclical. I know that not everyone agrees with that, but I would say they are. And so they kind of, I put them in that basket too. But also, if you like banks, right now banks start to become a little bit more appealing. Most people probably shouldn't own banks, of course, because they're kind of difficult to analyze. But for those of, for example, for Warren Buffett, he probably, I assume that he will be very happy right now because the banks are getting closer to, lower value again. And then last but not least, the kind of the IPO market, and especially spin-offs, not IPOs like unprofitable companies and such, spin-offs. Because those companies, they just get completely wrecked because everyone is just dumping the stock. So you see a lot of spin-offs that are down 50% and are actually very, very good businesses. There is a lot of uncertainty, of course, because it's just a spin-off. They're just starting out on their own. But needless to say, I think there is quite a bit of potential there if you can kind of figure out that unclarity around the stock.
Okay, let's talk about communication. First of all, your eToro posts. I was looking through your posts so I could answer the question, how regularly do you post? But you haven't been very active recently, but when you go back to when you were more active, you're posting every couple of weeks, maybe? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, actually, I was quite active for quite a long time, almost posting daily, but certainly weekly, yeah. But right now, I kind of shifted that focus towards YouTube. So a lot of my eToro followers are also on YouTube. They follow the channel, and there, of course, you have more or less basic stock news, daily stock news.
Well, let's talk about your YouTube channel. As I say, over 5,000 subscribers. And the most interesting thing about it to me is you were doing a video series to value every single business in the S&P 500. Is that ongoing?
Yeah, right now, I actually went on vacation for a little while. I came back right now. I kind of try to inform people about the most important businesses. Market has been selling off a little bit more rapidly. People in the comments go crazy. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? So I try to inform them because once again, my responsibility on YouTube is to inform my subscribers as best as I can. And so I certainly have this in my mind, valuing every single business in the S&P 500. I think right now we are like perhaps 70 or 80 or something. But certainly it's ongoing. But right now we're kind of focusing on the more important things for now. Because there's kind of, this fear in the market right now. So.
Well, let's talk about that series for a moment.
Sure.
Talk us through the process, the metrics you look at. I'm trying to wonder how deep a dive it is. How deep a dive can it be if you're trying to do every single one? There must be a limit to the extent to which you're researching companies you're not actually interested in for the sake of making a video. So talk us through the process and the metrics.
Yeah, so the research process consists of a couple of phases. On YouTube, what you see is the first phase. So what you do is you just take a business, you go mainly through the numbers, kind of part of their strategy. What is the business doing right now? Where does it want to go? What are the main issues? And how do the financials look? And so by doing that, you get a very well, at least a basic, but a thorough understanding of what precisely is going on with the business, if you're interested in it and the valuation looks decent, for example, then of course you can do much more research in it and decide to buy or not, which I also share on the channel. But obviously, this is not for every business the case, not at all.
Yeah, so it's an initial kind of filtration system.
Yeah, exactly. And usually, I kind of try to point out issues that are not that clear. So not like, oh, this business is not growing. I mean, most people know that, let's say, Verizon is not growing 25% a year. But it's interesting to take a look at specific policies. Are they doing buybacks? How is that financed? How are their debt levels? Stuff like that. A little bit of a more deep dive to the important aspects, but at the same time, still certainly an initial screen.
I want to talk about your delivery on YouTube, the way you speak. Now, you're a musician, and there's something artistic about the way you speak, and I'm hearing it in the conversation that we're having as well. But I think there's more of an emphasis to it on the videos. There's like a musicality to it. It rises and falls in pitch and emphasis and changes in tone and resonance.
Well, thank you so much.
Are you aware of that? Do you hear your musicality in the way you speak when you listen back to your videos? Because it's not the way I'm speaking, really. I mean, people say because I'm Irish, my voice is a bit sing-songy, but yours is very musical.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. No, I actually never quite realized that. Of course, I try to think about the way I address, in the videos, the public, and how I can get most out of my videos. Like I said, with the English issue, right? I need to work a little bit on my word choice here and there. But no, I never really, paid attention to the musicality of my voice.
Yes, it's sort of performative, the way you speak on your YouTube videos. So I can tell you're a bit of a performer. Have you been on stage much in your life? Is drama something you've been involved in?
Not drama specifically. No, I did perform with piano here and there. That is true.
So it is just the music coming through.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
All right. Well, if anyone wants to hear that musicality of delivery and, of course, all the good quality content, I will link to the channel. A quick glance at it reveals video titles such as Meta gets cheaper and cheaper, Intel is dirt cheap but no buy, shortly followed by Intel bull case explored. So, as Charlie would recommend, invert, always invert.
Yeah.
Then there's Alibaba is coming for Europe. In fact, loads of videos about Alibaba. That's obviously a company you're deeply involved in, which we'll talk about in the next section. You're saying your recent videos aren't part of that S&P 500 project. They're more about the big names, what people want to hear about, market outlook, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly right. Of course, I have a couple of companies that are, that I tend to focus on, right? Alibaba being the most important one. It's a company I know well, a company I do own, and a company my viewers like a lot too, or dislike a lot, but either way, they want to stay informed. So once again, that's my responsibility. And when going away for a while, there was a lot of stuff going on in China, also concerning businesses. Alibaba, of course, sinking to new lows again. Everyone thought, now it's the end. No, not yet. So it's my job to kind of keep, the market informed and my viewers informed for sure. And that is why right now I'm focusing on those companies.
And your latest video, which just went out within the last 24 hours, is called 3 Types of Stocks I Am Buying. Is that the same answer as the question about your watch list?
Exactly. You're exactly right. These are the 3 baskets I basically set out in the video.
And all of your videos are getting thousands of views. Even the recent ones, 3,500, 4,000, 2,500.
Yeah, I'm very lucky with my subscribers, that's for sure.
Any other plans for your YouTube channel beyond what you're currently doing?
No, I want to continue growing the channel. I want to hopefully reach even more people. That is a great goal of mine. I hope to keep my subscribers informed. That is for now the goal. So I will keep doing what I have been doing.
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Copytraders Club.
Copytraders Club.
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Copytraders Club.
Copytraders Club.
Turning our attention now to your portfolio, let me describe asset class allocation to the listener. It's quite a simple picture. Stocks, approximately 78%, ETFs, 22%. Cash position, effectively 0.
Yeah, that's right.
So you've got 21 positions, 7 ETFs, and 14 stocks, presumably.
Yeah.
Is that a size of portfolio you're happy with?
Yeah. At the end of the day, I don't like to sell. And that's kind of what sets me apart too, I guess, because I'm not a big fan of selling businesses all that much. And so that's also why the portfolio size is perhaps a little bit bigger. Coming back to those ETFs though, that's not entirely, I do indeed have 7, but 4 of them are almost 0. 3 of them are just so that I can check the price. When I'm on the phone, I can kind of see the price, so I bought that one day just to check everything out. And then another one is, more or less of a cash reserve. It's a world ETF that automatically reinvests in dividends and such. It's quite stable. I tend to use that as a cash reserve. If I don't know what to do with the money, I could put it there to work and then come back with it later. For example, I did that in 2021. I put cash in that ETF because everything was so expensive. And right now, this year, I could cash it out and buy something more appealing.
You described your portfolio as big. It's not big in eToro terms, but again, harking back to Charlie and Warren, they would say, do put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket.
Yes, I think that's also what I'm doing, given the large allocation into specific businesses. I mean, I think in the top 5 of my portfolio, top 5 assets, that's almost 70%.
Yeah. eToro put a limit on the position sizes, don't they, of 20%? Is that strictly, well, it's definitely not strictly enforced because I've seen plenty of PIs who exceed that, but that's something you'd like to stay within the bounds of?
Not necessarily, no.
If you had free reign, you'd be quite happy with larger position sizes?
Absolutely. If you know business well, I don't mind putting a lot of money in it.
Well, let's discuss some of those positions that you have put a relatively large amount of money in. As you've already suggested a few times in this chat, China is a big factor in your portfolio. It accounts for 47.73% of your invested column. And indeed, when I look down the top few positions, I see Alibaba, Tencent, JD are the top 3. Now, it wasn't long ago that China and the sentiment around China was very low relative to the US. But in recent months, the US has done a good job at catching up with that negative sentiment. Lots of negatives in China at the moment, though. Still, obviously, continuing COVID lockdowns, housing market woes, mortgage protests, rising unemployment, extreme weather events causing drama, energy shortages, and a slowing economy, and a currency weakening against the mighty dollar. How on earth could anyone be bullish on China at the moment, I ask you?
Well, I don't invest based on the short-term outlook. So if you take a look at China in, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years, I do believe it is still, an incredible country with incredible potential. And that is why I feel quite comfortable investing in China. A lot of the negative sentiment can really be explained by short-term factors, or simply misunderstanding, or perhaps disagreement. I don't, for example, agree with the market sentiment that the regulation that is imposed on those big businesses is bad. So if you take a look at the regulation that came the way to Alibaba, to Tencent, to JD, this is incredibly normal regulation. The fines that Alibaba got, I cheer for that. I mean, they deserve the fine there. Yes, I own the business. Of course, it's not good for me to get the fine. But it's a very logical consequence. And so if you just kind of destruct, right, what precisely is going on, I think you will figure out that it really is not as bad as it looks.
But it's a communist party interfering in the free market. How can that be a good thing?
Well, I don't think that's entirely true and fair to say. The system in China, of course, is different than our system, and we'll have to see over time how that turns out. Coming back to the fines, that is not really interfering with the market as such. I mean, in the US you have these fines too. In Europe you even have more fines if the same violations were committed. And if something, let's say Amazon gets a fine in France, we find it completely normal. But when Alibaba gets a fine in China, all of a sudden the world goes crazy.
Okay. You say you don't look at the short term, or you say you don't allow the short term to influence your investing decisions too much, but do you keep an eye on the macro situation?
Absolutely, for two reasons. First of all, because I find it incredibly interesting. I think it is important to understand what is going on in the world. You can at the same time also identify new opportunities, of course. And I also do it for another reason, and that is reason number two, of course, for my YouTube channel, because I know a lot of people are concerned with the short term. And people do get afraid of short-term things. And so my job, once again, on YouTube is to inform. And so I do have to stay on top of the news also in China.
Have you made any videos about reasons to be bullish on China in the short to medium term?
Not necessarily, no. I don't like to predict what is going to happen this year, next year, the year after. That is for me hard to say. What I try to do is just look at the short-term events, so to speak, and kind of see, is there merit to it? People are going crazy about the regulation. Is there merit in it? Does it really make sense? And then just look at the long-term outlook. And if the long-term outlook is great and the short-term issues can be addressed in, a rational way, let's say. So let's say they got fines, okay, deserved, and, the company can learn from that and improve. Then I think you have a bullish argument for you.
I thought you were going to say something like China can do stimulus because they have so less credit in the system that they can print money, unlike some of these Western countries, which are up to their eyes in debt.
Exactly. That's completely true. China has that advantage indeed. But yeah, once again, I don't like to buy a business based on economic outlook or economic possibilities, right? Because at the end of the day, what you're buying is a business, not a central bank or not an inflation number or not stimulus or whatever. You're buying a business. Of course, it gets affected by those factors. But at the end of the day, I'm looking to hold the business for 10 years, 50 years, 25 years, who knows? And so if they put stimulus into the economy right now, that is not necessarily of major concern for the upcoming 25 years.
I saw in one of your videos, you said in September, a team of American inspectors will touch down on Chinese soil in the hope of doing something miraculous, freely inspecting the internal auditing paperwork of Chinese firms listed in American exchanges. And if companies like Baba have done anything grossly wrong in their books, there's the threat of delisting. What's the latest on that whole story?
Well, right now, as far as I understood, the big four companies are basically inspecting right now in China. Indeed, they are doing that. They are busy with that process. It takes a lot of time to check a business like that. So I expect towards the end of the year, perhaps we have some more news. Otherwise, perhaps beginning next year. And so, yeah, we'll see. It's quite exciting. I'm happy that China cooperated. So we'll see.
I've also seen you not being concerned about delisting because there's always the Hong Kong listings or something like that. But how would that work if all of the ADR holders suddenly were to become shareholders in the Hong Kong listing, say, of Alibaba, 99.88, what would that do to the price? What would that do to the existing shareholders of the Hong Kong listing? Do you know what the mechanics of all that are?
Well, of course, it's difficult to say because Alibaba is such a big company, right? So for a delisting or change of shares of that size, that will be interesting to see how that works out. Now, the obvious consequences, I think, are short-term price pressure, right? So people are going to dump because they are afraid. I assume the price will decline. But at the end of the day, if you hold a piece of the business and you hold that, even if you buy an ADR, ultimately you will get transferred to Hong Kongese shares. Now, the only risk with delisting, I would say, is the broker. Because if a broker cannot swap out those shares, for example, for Hong Kongese shares, or perhaps not facilitate over-the-counter trade, then you might all of a sudden be in a situation of uncertainty. But on the whole, especially with such a big company, I do believe brokers will really try their hardest to facilitate something. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, you hold a piece of the business. If you buy or sell through Hong Kong or through the US, I mean, for you and me, probably that doesn't matter. Perhaps for a billion dollar hedge fund, it's a little bit different. But ultimately, I'm not too worried about delisting indeed.
Okay, well, let's look at the longer term situation with China. Have you been keeping an eye on the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party? Is Xi Jinping going to be in power for the next 20 years?
Yes, I certainly have taken a look. So this weekend, of course, a big weekend for the Chinese people. I talked about this with Chinese friends too, because it's really a huge event. Now, I don't know, much, of course, about the future of politics. I cannot tell you which regulations are going to pass or who's going to be the president for the next 20 or 25 years. No one knows, right? I don't know that either. But what I do know is that Xi Jinping will be in power for the upcoming 5 years for sure. And so today the news came out that there won't be that many major changes on the whole. So they will just see a continuation of what we have seen in, let's say, the past 5 years. So no major news there.
Do you know what cartoon character he is often lampooned as appearing like?
Not a clue.
Winnie the Pooh. No changes to the zero COVID policy?
No. As far as I know, right now it doesn't seem to be changing.
The funny thing about that is they're so keen on restricting the spread of COVID, but they're not too fussed about vaccination. Apparently that's not even discussed, really. Very few vaccinations going on.
I'm not quite sure if that is entirely true. I do know they have great vaccines in China too. I'm not quite sure what the vaccinations rates are and such. But of course, as you say, that's correct. The main goal of the Chinese government is to contain the virus rather than more the European US style, so to speak, just let it run out. We have to go on with our lives. So that's a decision they made. And these are very difficult decisions to be made too, because we always look at China with skepticism in this regard. Like, why would you do that? But at the end of the day, we're talking about human lives, right? And if you let the virus run out, it might eventually turn out to be better. But, this is kind of an estimation, right? No one knows for sure. But you will have to give up human lives. At the end of the day, I understand it's a very difficult dilemma to discuss. Countries have made their own choice in that regard. And, as shareholders, so to speak, we kind of have to deal with that. We know that this country might have local lockdowns here and there for the upcoming time.
Have you had COVID?
Yes, twice, actually.
What flavor did you have?
I'm not quite sure, actually. I got Delta, I think. And then another one, a Micron, but I'm not quite sure.
Was Delta much worse?
Just a little, not that much. For me, it was quite fine. I recovered quite nicely. So,
Well, see, you're young, as we mentioned earlier. You're young and strong. It's only the old and infirm that have much to fear.
Yeah, no, I get it. Of course, at my age, you're not too worried about the COVID virus right now. But I do understand, for society as a whole, these are just very difficult questions because I do know, of course, older people too, and they are much more worried about what the virus can do, and rightfully so, I'd say. By the way, one thing I do want to mention is that I also know people that got long COVID that really are still struggling right now. They recovered kind of, but right now they still just work half days and such, right? So, and these are also young and strong people, but they actually got that. So it remains a very difficult question what society should do and such. Of course, I don't have the golden answer either, but certainly it is a difficult virus to deal with.
As a Buffett fan, I wonder, do you follow Phil Town and his podcast?
No, I actually do not.
Well, he does a podcast with his daughter, Danielle, where he teaches her all about value investing, basically, from the Munger Buffett school. And they've been doing it for years, talking about every aspect of it in tremendous detail. And she's, I think, in her 30s, and she's had long COVID for 2 years. And it sounds absolutely horrific.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
Like the recovery is going to take forever. Her brain function isn't what it used to be, she says. That's pretty heavy.
It certainly is. It is terrible, yeah. This is something you don't wish to anybody.
Okay, you say you don't like to sell positions. Let's get back to your portfolio. I dipped into your history to have a look at recent selling activity, and that defaults initially to 30 days. And shows no activity, so I changed it to 3 months. And still no activity. I changed it to 6 months. Eventually, I found you'd trimmed one position within the last 6 months, and that was the World Index, SWDA. Yeah. So very little selling going on. Then I thought, well, what has Thijs been doing? Has he been nibbling away as prices have come down? The only buying activity I can see recently was a little nibble on Tencent, which was this month. Prior to that, we have to go back to June, when you had nibbles on JD, Meta, and Mercado Libre. Mm-hmm. Does that accurately describe your activity?
Yeah, I do believe so. It is indeed true that I haven't sold anything. I think for a year and a half, something like that. My last really sell was actually for eToro, because I couldn't have that 20% limit, so I kind of had to trim some things down. The world index, like I said, is more like a cash reserve. So that position is mainly there to eventually be trimmed down again. So no selling activity at all, that is true. I have been buying quite a lot this year, especially in the beginning of this year, quite aggressively. And right now I'm still buying. So.
And are these from fresh funds?
Yeah, so it is dividends reinvested, of course. These are probably the small nibbles you're talking about. And so I do add funds too, but I also have one other broker account on the side, so to speak. So it kind of flows money into too, kind of depending on reasons, because the dividend taxes are not kind of streamlined on eToro for me. That's probably something Dutch, which is a little bit annoying. But ultimately the names are exactly the same.
Yeah, it's not exclusively Dutch. It's the same for many people, the withholding tax and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, so for example, one thing I would give as an example is, for example, Walgreens Boots Alliance, right? You have kind of high dividend there. Sometimes it's just not ideal if on eToro, that gets nibbled away by taxes you don't really have to pay, and they're kind of difficult to get back. So these big dividend stocks I'd rather put somewhere else where that immediately is kind of eliminated. But once again, all the names are the same, and on my channel I do share exactly what I buy in my other brokerage accounts too.
I was going to ask you about your best and worst investments, but I guess your worst investment would have to involve selling. So have you sold out at a terrible loss on anything?
Actually, to date, I have never made a loss at all on stocks. So I'm very lucky with that, because especially when I started out in this raging bull market. Okay, so I was lucky because when I was 9 years old, I had not a clue what I was doing, but I did sell with a profit. When I was 14, I bought this Belgian company. I read through the annual reports. I thought, interesting company. What they did is they shipped oil across the world. What I didn't realize is that it's actually just a short against oil, because if the oil price collapses, a lot of people panic and oil needs to be shipped all over the place. And then they get so much business, the price doubles or something like that, like 120% gain on your stock. And on top of that, you get a one-time huge dividend payment, perhaps 30-40% on costs or something like that. Really, really big. Okay, this is all fine, right? It's just short against oil. Okay, that's not something I would like. But at that point, I just didn't have a clue that was the case. So I didn't understand the industry well enough. At that point, I was like 14 years old or something like that. So I did certainly make mistakes, but they never materialized.
Well, you're down quite a lot on some of these positions. I'm looking at the bottom of your portfolio.
Absolutely.
More than 25% down on 7 of your, how many did we say stocks?
14, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so half of your stocks are more than 25% down. The largest of which is Alibaba, which is 39.5%. So that's got a long way to come back if you're to continue your proud record of never losing.
Exactly, yeah. No, I think that will be perfectly fine, frankly. Look, I started buying this business especially a lot in the beginning of this year. It was trading at 120. I was thinking, wow, this is value. I was talking about it on my YouTube channel. A lot of people thought it was value. Right now, it is at 70. So things can really turn out quite wonderfully in the market sometimes. It's a better opportunity now than it was at 120, obviously, which is a great thing. That is why you see the loss there. I think on the long term, that should level out.
And what's Charlie Munger's position in Baba now?
The same. So he bought through the Daily Journal Corporation. And so he bought in, if I remember correctly, Q1 and Q3 of 2021, and then trimmed it in like Q4, like half the size.
For tax loss harvesting.
And right now he just has that same position. So nothing changed.
Do you think he'll be around to see the profits from Baba?
I certainly hope so. I wish Charlie Munger a very long life.
Okay, let's move on to copiers then. Thijs, tell us, who should copy you?
Well, I think the ultimate candidate for copying me should have a long-term outlook and really, patience. That is at the end of the day all it is. If you believe in buying great businesses at great prices, and of course, always be critical, right? So take a look at the portfolio. Think, hey, do I think these are great bets? But if so, do you have the patience to really sit it out? I think that is super important. Coming back to Alibaba, Alibaba has been a great test for investors. People started screaming it was cheap in 2020, at the end of 2020. Beginning 2021, even Charlie Munger bought in quite early. And right now, on the first investment that Charlie Munger did, he's perhaps down 70%, 75%. Patience.
Okay, and to make it abundantly clear, who shouldn't copy you?
You should certainly not copy me if you want to put in the money now and next month take it out again.
And Thijs, I hope this doesn't get lost in translation. It's not a rude question, but it's one I have to ask. What makes you so special?
What makes me so special? I think what really sets me apart is the looking for great businesses. Quite a bit of people try to do this, right? Looking for great businesses. Patience. I hope to prove that my patience is much longer than most people's. But especially what I think kind of distinguishes me from the rest of, let's say, the value investing community, right? Which essentially tries to buy great companies at great prices, is really a long-term vision. So really kind of Warren Buffett style, really extreme long time periods, not 5 years. Let's say Alibaba right now goes to $400 a share. Great profit. A lot of people will say, sell, sell, sell. But I bought Alibaba because I really think it is an excellent business, not just because of the value. So if it goes to 400 right now, I would think, ooh, that's kind of a steep increase, but I would still just let it sit there and do its own thing. And second of all, I do maintain a rather aggressive cash strategy. So if I get cash, I have a deal immediately back into the market, which is something that people don't tend to do that often.
I want to talk about how, there's a difference between being a value investor deep in your bones and living that way, and that's how you invest. That's all fine, and I totally get that. But it's quite restrictive to act like that as a PI on eToro. That doesn't get you the copiers. Copiers don't have great patience. It doesn't get you the kind of results to get them in the first place in the short term, and it's hard to keep them. I imagine the copiers you do have are quite solid.
Yeah.
Because they have to buy into that sort of thing. But I know what your answer is going to be, but do you find yourself getting pulled in different directions because of the institutional imperative, as Buffett would say, that exists on eToro?
Absolutely not. I completely recognize what you're saying, and I do believe it to be true indeed, what you're telling me. But at the end of the day, tracing short-term movements might work out, might get you more popular on eToro, but it will certainly not guarantee any healthy, sustainable returns for your copyists. And that is, at the end of the day, the most important. As a copy trader on eToro, you have a responsibility. People have money, they literally copy you. Okay, so they literally said, okay, this person is doing something. Here's some money. Just do exactly the same what he does. At the end of the day, that really requires a lot of trust. And my main mission is to really deliver great returns for them on the long term, and not to do all kinds of crazy short-term activity or a lot of hedges, for example, which is also quite popular, right? Hedges to take away the volatility, stuff like that. I don't think that will help you in any way in the long term in terms of returns. And so that is why I certainly will not be engaging in any of that activity.
Okay, that makes me wonder how you would answer this next question then. What role do you think you play in a copier's portfolio of PIs? And if you were to recommend to a copier how they should compose their team of PIs with you in it, who would be in that team? What sort of PIs?
That's indeed a great question. So I think for me, my role in the team, okay, would be that long-term, the long-term kind of fund, right? You put in money once, you just let it sit there. Never look at it again. Now, if you're an investor that really cares about volatility, for example, or thinks, hey, look, I have some money in eToro, I might want to pull it out in 3-5 years, then of course you kind of want to build a team around it that, has less volatility, for example, kind of equal out that volatility so that you have some type of stability in the portfolio. But I will be that one player that really, tries to get the best returns over a very long period of time. You put money in it once, you don't touch it again. And so depending on personal financial goals, you can construct a team around that, I'd say.
Okay, let's move on to eToro itself. Are there any changes you would love to see on the platform?
I like eToro a lot. I think it has a lot of opportunities. What I do always like to see is when they add new equities that you can buy. All right, so it kind of expands that horizon, especially for small cap, mid cap in the US. The options are somewhat limited, which is logical, of course, because there won't be as much volume in those names as in others. But at the end of the day, it could certainly be a great thing for individual investors, I think.
So keep adding to the stocks that are available for purchase.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think that's about it. Yeah, perhaps they could change the risk to volatility score.
Okay, what other PI would you say you know best on a personal level?
I don't think anyone. Actually.
Do you communicate online even with other PIs?
Not really through eToro. Of course, sometimes I do have, some connections with YouTubers and stuff. Very small ones. Of course, my viewers I like a lot because they are very critical thinkers and they certainly help me, and hopefully I help them to improve their own investing record. But in terms of PIs, no.
In that case, Thijs, there's nothing remaining but for me to ask you the final question. Do you know what that's going to be?
I'm a little bit afraid now, but bring it on.
Well, what's the one question that I haven't asked you during this chat that you wish I had?
Wow. That's a very difficult question. The one question you have not asked me, but I wish you did. There is one thing. I would love to talk a little bit about Tencent. Why did you buy Tencent, Thijs?
Consider it asked.
Yeah, because Tencent is kind of an interesting story, a little bit of a different story too. Because Alibaba and JD, for example, or Apple or Alphabet, you really look at operating income, you look at the cash flows and stuff like that. They are just businesses that operate. Tencent has that too. They have the software business that just operates and you value based on that. But on top of that, you get these investing capabilities. A little bit like Berkshire Hathaway. I don't know if you have ever owned Berkshire Hathaway or if you own Berkshire Hathaway. I assume yes, but just an assumption.
I don't.
Okay. Because if you try to value that business, it's also rather hard, because you have so many different things. You have the operating business, you have the stock portfolio, etc. And Tencent is a little bit of a similar story here. I find Tencent a fascinating business because they have that strong software core business, but on top of that, they have those investment capabilities. Really great, successful investors there, and also rather aggressive cash strategy. So that is something that we connect on.
Well, I saw you answering on eToro that to a question about Proces, which is listed in the Netherlands. And would you consider owning Tencent through Proces? But you didn't like the layers of complication.
Exactly. I think at the end of the day, and I've said this before on my YouTube channel too, at the end of the day, I think Tencent, in my opinion, is a little bit of the better bet. Because for Proces, it's not only about Tencent, it's also about management at Proces, the other bets you get with it. And it just doesn't appeal to me. So even though you might have that undervaluation in book value, you should also bear in mind, usually you get a discount when you buy like a conglomerate like that. It is not entirely, my preference there. I think the core business of Tencent is phenomenal. What you get on top with Proces, not necessarily adding that much value, I think.
Well, you've certainly added plenty of value to the Copytraders Club with this chat today, Thijs. Thank you so much for dropping by.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Well, maybe we'll do it again in, as you say, 5 years' time once things have recovered.
Yeah, that would be great.
And we can see how much you've compounded over that time.
Yes, let's do that.
Many thanks to Thijs. Interesting to get the perspective of a young value investor, cadet PI, whose deep conviction in the principles of value investing will not be influenced by the very particular demands of the eToro platform. That's all from me. See you on Discord and Facebook. Until next time we meet at Copytraders Club, I wish you many happy returns. Obviously, anything you hear in this podcast is for entertainment only, not financial advice. Do your own research. This is just generic chit-chat. We don't know your individual circumstances, etc., and so forth.